What's up,
Good
Andrew?
good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Did you vote for Donald Trump?
I did.
Why did you do something like that?
Well, I'll tell you exactly why. But
Thank you,
I'd appreciate if you'd let me get my reasoning out as well. So
for sure.
I think that the left uses emotional appeals for voting all the time. I think it's perfectly acceptable that they do so. I actually voted for Donald Trump because he wasn't. I didn't want a president.
So that was the reasoning, all of it.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it would be a very bad idea to have a as a president, especially with all the wars that are going on. We need to project strength. We definitely can't have a as president, at least not at the moment, but preferably never.
So you believe that are not as capable of leading as men are capable of leading.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So then, like, you think like a manager would be incapable of managing?
Well, don't really manage very often. If you look at the
I mean,
top,
they that's
well,
actually not true.
it is.
They
If you look at the
manage a
top jobs
lot.
of, we can go through them, but the top jobs of are things like kindergarten teacher, nursing, secretary work. Those are the jobs that they do. When it comes to like power executive jobs, there's very, very few who are in those occupations. They're not very good at them, and there's good reasons why they're not very good at them.
So you believe that's what it ought to be. It ought to be that way. Like
Well,
men
no, I'm
should.
giving you the descriptive is, and since it is that way, I'm not going to vote to have a manage my nation because descriptively, no, they're not very good at management. That's one. And two, men tend to use more rational thinking when it comes to foreign affairs. So, Trump, for instance, one of the reasons he's always been very cautionary about war is because he hates calling families. He hates making the call and telling people that their children have been in combat or been, I'm sorry, TikTok rule, been unalived in combat. He doesn't like doing that. So he's very wary about sending young men off to war.
So I mean, this is a very argument.
Well, I don't know if
Um,
it's, I
I,
think
I
that it's an
believe I believe
emotional
that
appeal.
men are more likely to be more emotionally irrational when it comes to making those decisions because we are pumped full of testosterone.
Well, no, estrogen makes you more irrational than testosterone.
That's not true.
It is true. You can look it
Then
up
why
right
are
now.
men more violent and
Well, their
are the leading
capacity,
cause of unalivings here in
yeah,
America?
the capacity for utilizing force doesn't mean you're using force irrationally. You understand that? So because you have the capacity to do a thing and you don't, in this case, men have the capacity to use a force multiplier because they're capable of doing so. It's not actually irrational that they do. What would be irrational about that? About using force? There's nothing irrational about doing that.
So I mean, do you have a study to this claim that you're making right now?
Yeah. So I
I would
mean,
love to read up on this.
yeah. For instance, if men have an offset, if like let's say for instance they get testicular cancer, one of the ways that they will treat the cancer is by pumping their body full of estrogen. And this and basically cutting off the testosterone supply makes them highly irrational. But if you up estrogen levels, if the estrogen levels are too high or testosterone levels are ridiculously high in men or women, it can lead to irrational thinking. But just saying, hey, men have higher testosterone, therefore they're more irrational is silly. It just means that that they have something which can assist you with a strength multiplier for force. But what's actually irrational about using force? Nothing, right? There's nothing actually irrational about
No,
that.
no. I mean, I asked you for a study
Okay,
and where
well,
you're basing this
well,
information on,
do you think what type of
because
study
these are
would you
very
like?
generalized. These are very generalized statements that you're making
Which statement
about
do you want to study for?
scientific facts, right? So you're saying that men are more irrational than men. So if you have a study on that,
Yes, yes, they are more irrational, and yes, there are for this. But if you want to look at you can just go to WebMD even and look at the effects of estrogen on emotions and mood. If your emotions are thrown out of capacity or your mood begins to swing, you're going to be more prone to make irrational decisions. You would agree with that, right?
no, I'd like to see the study before I can agree on it.
Well, no, I'm
So
not even
are
asking
you?
you to agree with the study. That's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to just agree that if
You're
it
asking me
is
to become a
true,
scientist
that's not what I'm
and
asking.
base my opinion on the facts that you're laying down.
Okay, the effects of estrogen on emotions and mood. Estrogen is closely linked with the emotional well-being of people assigned female at birth AFAB, or those assigned male at birth AMAB, which just means male female. Depression, anxiety affects you more during your estrogen producing years than when you don't make the hormone, which means it would be linked to low moods, mood swings, things like this. If this is the case, then that would mean, as an effect of that, logically, that you are more prone to irrational behavior. How could you not be?
Okay, so I mean, this is just the estrogen effects on a woman's emotions, correct?
Yeah, so this was the counter to your idea that
All right.
because men
Well,
have testosterone,
I
that
mean,
makes
it's
them
not, but I
irrational.
mean, that's just singular. That's just singular. Like, so what about the irrational effects on testosterone to men?
Yeah, but the thing is that there's not good links that testosterone affect the rationality of men. Rather, the lack of testosterone seems to affect the rationality of men. Men have the capacity to
I think
handle
the
many.
lack and the
Yeah.
abundance could
Nope.
be.
Nope. Here's what's interesting. If you redline testosterone in men, it generally doesn't have much of an adverse effect because we're many times lower in society than we used to be. So if you redline it at like 1200 or 1300 in men, it actually is not particularly harmful to them. They don't really have much of a side effect from it because their body is designed to use it. Now, we know this because we people who take steroids and lots of testosterone for bodybuilding, things like this. And if you're not taking an actual steroid enhancement, just testosterone, there's not much in the way of anything except improvement on your mood.
Hmm, that's interesting.
But I mean, it makes sense, right? And so this is the thing is like right now, most people are many times under what they should be for testosterone, men, and actually, I mean, need testosterone too, and they're usually too low on testosterone as well, but they can't handle it as well as men can. But if you want to see a significant improvement in mood, if you're in your 30s or 40s, oftentimes taking a testosterone supplement will instantly increase your mood. So the heightened level of testosterone is definitely not something which is harmful to men's rational thinking.
Okay. Well, I mean, so your point of voting for Donald Trump was solely because the opposition was.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible idea to have at the head of the most powerful military on planet Earth, especially considering in that very nation cannot be drafted. It seems to me to be completely hypocritical that we would then place one in command of the military itself.